Hello and welcome. I'm your host Garrett, and this is 35 Fox Talks. Today we're talking about the importance of the relationship between 35 Foxes and 35 Tangos. And to do that, we welcome retired warrant officer and 353 Tango, Evan Beeson. Throughout his career, Evan served as a 96 Romeo ground surveillance radar operator, the former infantry of the MI Corps, and then reclassed to 33 Whiskey, which later recoded to 35 Tango. As a 35 Tango, Evan supported multiple Army ground and aerial combat and intelligence collection units. Serving from MI companies to theater intelligence brigades, Evan has a wealth of experience he now brings to the defense industry company he works for, and now also to us. And of course, before we get to the conversation, please remember the views and opinions expressed by the participants in the course of this conversation are their own and do not reflect the positions or policies of the companies they work for. With the disclaimer complete, let's get to the conversation. Late add-on for an additional disclaimer, the universe has a great sense of humor in that the network wasn't completely stable in the conversation between a 35 Fox and a 35 Tango, so that means on occasion you'll hear Evan or myself kind of drop off. That's not because we're swearing, it's because we're experiencing our own DDIL environment talking about how to live in a DDIL environment. Enjoy! All right. Hey, Evan, it's good to see you again. Welcome to the channel.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And then for the purposes of this interview, what I've noticed over time is that as we've put more computers into command posts and put more computers into the hands of foxes everywhere, there's this steady confusion of what the difference is between analysts and the technicians that support them with communications, with computing and everything else. Those lines get kind of blurred and everyone kind of assumes what everyone's job is. So to really clear this up, my first question for you is, as a 350 Tango, what is the task and purpose of a 35 Tango in today's MI4 structure?
353 Tango, but so
I'm
close.
going to fire myself. Damn it.
I know, right?
I've been retired for but a short period of time and forgot
You need to
everything.
normalize your data.
Crap.
35 Tango. I mean, it's in the name, maintainer and integrator of Intel systems. What does that actually look like? Running a maintenance program that makes sure all Intel systems are readily available at the commander's discretion to be employed for operations. The integration piece is more critical, I think, in today's realm where different multinational partners coming in, new mission sets, Ukraine kicks off, whatever it is, the environment and the network that you're plugging those Intel systems into or trying to collaborate with creates integration challenges. So I would say over the last decade, a 35 Tangos had to get really good at integrating on new networks, different networks, working with different network owners, different J6s, G6s, multi-domain networks, from doing warfighters to doing real operations. That's been a struggle to do those things and get the data. It's materialized into buying multiple sets of hard drives for different domains. It gets really cumbersome. But maintenance is like the easy part of our job because it's very standardized and repeatable. Integration is the hard part of our job because often the environment changes and we're not repeating the same integration environment. I think it was ForceCom. And ForceCom, it would be more standardized as you go to NTC and ramp up for that kind of thing, but it changes often. You're often trying to integrate with new units, different units, trying to do new exciting things. Good idea, fairies fly in that environment too. So hopefully that scratched the itch. Is there anything I left on the table that you feel like I didn't address?
I think it's useful for foxes because when I was a 35 Fox, I had no idea what a Tango was. It was, hey, it's this person who magically comes up and fixes whatever computer issue I'm having. Uh, but we forget you said hardware and systems maintenance is relatively easy. I think for all foxes, it's useful to understand what's your typical like Tango shop manning. How many Tangos are there?
It's generally always undermanned from what
Yeah,
the intel and the
exactly.
TDA is. That's the first thing. It depends on the level. At the ASCC level, like an MI brigade could have 10 to 18 35 tangos with a few junior NCOs sprinkled in, running different teams. At 513th, we run a dice team, so we would have a tactical I 35 Tingo's focused on tactical systems, and then and fixed site had its own D6 brain, so we'd have a team in there that was focused on fixed site. But I've the FORCECOM units and the MICOs, we were always undermanned. It was very challenging, and it was just any free tango available to work on any tactical system problem that we had. Uh, at the brigade level, if we were lucky to go up there to the brigade two and do support with those guys and work on the D6 stacks, but at the MICO struggles. But yeah, it's generally always undermanned. Tangos have more work, typically have more work unless contractors are heavily involved, which that was 2008, 10 through 2012. A lot of contractors were involved, and it frustrated a lot of tangos. But I think these days that we're getting back to soldier operated, soldier maintained, really focused on that and trying to deliver. I think the industry is trying to deliver capabilities that are maintainable and operatable by soldiers without the contractor heavy hands on. So hopefully that scratched the itch a little bit.
Yeah, where I'm trying to land in the education and enrichment of foxes is a tango shop is usually lucky if there's 8 personnel in there.
Yeah.
At a core
It
division, I
depends.
got it an MI brigade. You can have
Shoot.
more.
The third corps, I mean, they had less than five
Right.
tangos. It was crazy that was like that.
And here's where I want to go with that. When you say it was easy to do maintenance, that's a relative term, as you said. It was easy to do maintenance with 5 personnel if there was only one bloody truck. But when you have to do, hey, maintain, because in the Army we put servers on wheels, maintain 5 trucks, all with servers on wheels, maintain a support brigade's infrastructure, which is its own set of servers, maintain the core
Yeah.
headquarters, maintain this other air defense brigade, if you will, and their stuff. Now maintain the multiple servers, the multiple communication stacks,
So
maintain
that's where
all
you're
of the
getting where it's not
software.
easy.
Yeah.
When I say maintaining, fixing broken things is actually pretty straightforward and easy. Where it gets hard is staying accredited to be on the network, employing security patches, updates. That's when it gets kind of hard and difficult. When applications break because you installed your next update and you got to understand why it broke. And of course, they never sandboxed it at the SIL or did it on the classified environment. So you're literally doing it on operational equipment, trying to figure out, wow, Fox is probably upset that their application is not running properly. Their MFWS is not running like it should, or whatever. So that's when it gets hard and frustrating. And then when those issues compile across, at a fixed site, hundreds of systems, you rolled out an update and it's impacting everybody. You're like, oh man. So you got to prioritize your work orders based on who's, the HG first, obviously, or the Fusion Cell OIC. He'll take care of him first, and then his worker bees, and make sure he gets prioritized first. But that's only 35 Fox stuff. That's only all source stuff. The Signalers, they own stuff. So when their stuff breaks, it's a big deal too, and that can still focus from what you guys care about. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, and that's where exactly where I also wanted to go is it's just not Tango support Foxes. You are 5 personnel to 18 personnel, different ages, different experiences, different training, supporting all of the military intelligence hardware across whatever that footprint is, multiple sites, SIGINT, IMIT, terrain analysis, human all source, counterintelligence. That's all you, all the same 5 to 18 personnel
Yep.
to keep all of that running, to set it all up, keep it all running, and then to tear it down, make sure none of us go to jail for having a bunch of non-compliance issues spread across this thing. If any of it breaks, you guys are trying to fix that out. And then as all of this new artificial intelligence and big data and fancy
Hmm.
tech comes on board, really the default is, well, the tangos will know how to make all these computers, which you said is the hard part. Let's just integrate all of this randomness together so that foxes and Novembers and Sierras and Papas and Golfs and et cetera can make it all happen. You're like, that's the task and purpose of the Tango community, which is a small community to begin with, and you're undermanned. You're not at full strength
Yeah. And
anyway.
We could do that integration, but it time. Like it takes time. Time plus Tango will equal integration. Problem is we don't have time because we're undermanned and there's just so much stuff being thrown at us, and exercise calendar doesn't stop. The next thing's coming up. We got to integrate for that. So, but you're touching on something that the community really needs from the operator community is you guys knowing your systems, how to set them up. Like the more you guys can do on your own, the more time you're going to give back to the tangos to work on those problems that you guys can't solve. If it's, integrating some of these niche capabilities and softwares and data flows that you need help with, the more you guys can do, the better, the more time you give tangos. And what we do to give back, and this is something I tried to push when I was in, I'm not trying to go down the story, a rabbit hole too far, but, when I was a young tango and enlisted, I didn't really care what the operators did. I just focused on doing my job and setting, solving work orders and moving on to the next thing. It became apparent when I switched over to being a warrant officer, I had to learn what you guys were doing and learn your language, learn what you're doing with the applications. I started carrying 3x5 cards and writing down every acronym you guys would say and started writing them all down, writing them out and trying to understand what was going on and leaning forward. I tried to kill the culture of the JAFO, just a fucking operator, excuse my language. I don't know if you got to blank that out. But Tangos used to say that for years, and I don't think it did a service to a team coming together that's multifunction, and just working together. So I tried to kill that in every shop I worked in is like, no, you're not going to treat an operator that way. You're going to encourage them to get better at their own system while you lean forward to learn their language, and hopefully they'll learn how to set up their system. So uh, just wanted to throw that out there. I think it's important to address.
One aspect of that that I want to pull the thread on is as a junior Fox and even as a junior 350 Fox, I had the assumption that 35 tangos and 353 tangos were being taught the intelligence process and the operations process and all of this stuff. And then as I went through my career and I worked with Narada, it became very apparent. It's like, sure, the concept is pitched, but an understanding is not necessarily had. Like tangos are focused
No.
in their training on learning tango skill craft, not on what are the steps of the intelligence preparation of the battlefield in any way that you're going to remember or care about, not about how ISR is applied, not about the joint targeting process. So when foxes are learning how to set up their systems and we come to tangos with problems, we as foxes just start spewing this jargon of I need my computer to do these things for all these random acronyms and buzzwords that you don't necessarily understand. You're like, I don't know what any of
Right.
that means. And we're not working to inform you about the inputs and the outputs that I need to achieve to help you prioritize. So what kind of intelligence process training do 35 tangos receive in professional military education?
That is, I mean, you hit on the head, like ALC, SLC. That's when we really get our first exposure when we go to back to Fort Huachuca NCO Academy there. And if you remember Bloom's taxonomy, we're just memorizing acronyms and reading. That's all we're doing. There's very little application, right? So, and if it's application, it's in a tabletop exercise kind of way. It's not in using your Intel systems. This is something I pushed Okabayashi and the other chiefs of the MI. Like we've got to get systems together to have from the warrant officer courses to the NCO courses. Like you have pads out behind Road Hall. Like get all the systems together and integrate them and then show the application of what we're talking about, the Intel process, doing collection management, doing these things, and what that looks like on the system so that when a tango's got to help you guys in a real ops environment, it's not the first time they're seeing it.
Yeah, there was a lot of instances where I would go up to a tango and I would say, "Hey, I can't produce an order of battle on this. How do I get there?" The tango's like, "I don't know what an order of battle is. What are you trying to
Yeah, what
achieve?
is
And where
that?
where does that lie in importance? Because the S2 says I can't print, and that seems very important. This other person over here is like, my CPOF isn't really working." And you go, "The
Right,
command post of the future is not a tango imperative, but I'll do my best to help you." I'm
right,
screaming, the order of battle system isn't working. The November is going, the Trojan is down. And in a Tango's
right.
mind, you're racking and stacking not on some Intel process thing. You go, okay, the Trojan is down, automatically priority number one, because without the communications network, we're not going to be able to do anything else. So the rest of you are just going to have to stuff it. But as a Fox, I can't use intelligence preparation of the battlefield lexicon with you guys to be like, it's really important that I get red diamonds printed out right. You're like, I sounds like communication and getting the intel is more important to me.
And unfortunately, that didn't become very real to me until, Iran started shooting missiles in Iraq in early 2020. And Brian Wimmer is a 350 Fox and I were down there. We noticed that in the talk, I can't remember the building name where they had the G3 was at, and they're running operations for like all of the Middle East, well, most of the Middle East, not Afghanistan. But they're on Geeks J. They're using Falcon View. They got blue diamonds or blue icons everywhere, but they don't know where the red is. And I'm like, why is there not red on this picture? Like, how do you plan operation? You don't have any red in here. So Brian and I worked with Doomhammer. Oh my gosh, Chief Graham, say it before Graham, and he had a D6 stack. He was putting the intel in there. It was in the TED, and we worked to update it. We worked to move it over. We tried to use a DDS, a BCCS stack. Of course, the six couldn't get their crap together. Although they were willing to hear us and work with us, and they tried really, really hard, but they just never got there. And then we ended up using ICI to bend the data to get it to GeekJ and Falcon View, and we got the red eye diamonds on the and then the G3 is like, what is this? This is a big mess. I don't know if I want to see this. No. So, but like order of battle, seeing reports for Iranian UAS units, like that was when I was over there after rockets were flying in, and I don't want Iran targeted, and making sure that this intel is in there and what those red diamonds mean, and the importance of that. Like it's just a shame that it wasn't until I was in a real environment where it really mattered that I've got the gravity of that. I feel like USAICO could do a better job of helping Tangos understand the gravity of the intel systems, the data flows, like what it can really mean. Soldiers dying on the battlefield because they don't know there's bad guys coming in. So, or enemy units are in the area. I think that's super important. I try to help Tangos understand that, but the rat race of day-to-day things that we do, and chasing metrics on slides can help us lose sight of that very quickly.
Yeah, it wasn't until there was one time in the 82nd where Narada sat a group of us down and said, I want to understand your workflow because I can't exactly remember his words. He was like, I think you think I know where all of the implied tasks are in this chain of events. And he was like, okay, you say you guys need to do what first in IPB? And we said terrain analysis. And he goes, great. I don't know what that means. You need a map? I mean,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
geospatial cell has tons of maps, and we go, no, it's not just maps. It's DTED, it's view sheds. He goes, okay, you're
So,
saying
so
things
to
that
your
I don't
point,
understand.
to your point, like I didn't learn really understand what a McCoo was
Yeah.
until WOAC.
And
Or
that's how
maybe
many
WOAC.
years? How many years
It
into
was
your
one.
career?
I mean, I'm like 12 years in the army at that
You're
point.
12 years in the Army as a tango.
Been in a tango over 10 years. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I, that's the frustrating thing is not learn and then learning what softwares and applications can run a McCoo for you automatically, and seeing that on a system displayed, and let's break it and let a Tango figure out how to fix it. Like we don't get those reps and sets. We really don't.
Yeah. And so what that means is when we say, hey, the geospatial server is down, you go, is that terrible for you? Is that bad for you? Is that inconvenient? Because as a Tango person, again, who is 5 to 8 people trying to support something like 200 people and all of the equipment and all of the
Mhm.
applications and all of the integration, you're going, I have to prioritize. And when a Fox comes up and goes, my map's not working, you're like, how critical is it that your map isn't working? Where do we stand on this? Is this a map that supports the McCoo? Is the McCoo important right now? Because as you said, up until 12 years in, if I come up to you and I go, I can't do a McCoo, you go, I don't know how critical that is. Is that a bad thing?
Yeah, exactly.
I have DNS problems, and I have latency problems, and I have server config file problems, and I have air filter problems. I don't know what a McCoo even means. So
Right.
if you're a Fox, don't assume that a 35 Tango, even if they were lightly taught something, that they're going to bother to retain it amongst the sea of requirements on the technical side that you guys have to like, for example,
I,
how many different router configurations do you have to memorize? You get like Cisco, you have
oh my
Dell.
gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
BGP routes, you got OSPF routes, like
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff that
This
you
is the
try to
shit you need
remember.
to remember.
Well, you
Yeah.
try to you as a Tango, you try to reverse engineer X and DISA set up everything so that when stuff breaks, you understand where it breaks and how to re like, do I need to call DISA, get a circuit reroute, or do I need to work with my six element because they screwed up something in the routing? Like, and it's affecting my, the ops floor or the Intel ops floor. But I think Foxes could really help Tangos. I said it once already. I just want to hit it on the head and really hit it hard. When you guys are doing IPB, when you guys are doing those processes and you're using your applications and working, plan some time to do some technical training with the Tangos to show them what the application is doing for you, how it's supposed to work, because that'll at least give a Tango a foundational understanding of like, okay, I know what it's supposed to do, and I've seen what it's supposed to, this application is supposed to do on this server, on this domain, on this network. Now it's not doing that thing. I at least have a base foundation of what it should be doing when I fix it. Now let me go in and start playing with some variables from the network level to the data level to the application level and start seeing where we're having issues and misconnects, And I think it'll give the Tango a target to aim for them when they're troubleshooting too, instead of just saying like, Sage isn't working, I can't do a McCoo, and he's like, I don't know what a McCoo is. I've seen Sage notionally installed Stack and like never ran it before, so I don't even know what it does. Like, that's the problem is there's so much applications and new tools out there that we get cursory knowledge on how to install them and maybe turn them on, barely any understanding of what that tool actually does when fed with good data, garbage data, but good data, and show what the expected output of an application is. Like once a month, if you could do that with your Tangos, like, hey, 30 minutes, I'm going to show you what this particular application does and what I use it for and how it's supposed to work when it's running. You're going to arm those Tangos to support better in the future. It'll pay huge dividends.
So here's a question, just for an example. How many apps were in the DSig store when DSig was winding down? Like 212?
It was a lot.
220?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a
Asking
lot.
asking someone to remember how all of those apps are supposed to function, crazy. I, as a Fox, didn't even use 212. So this is the burden we put on the Tangos. But you were saying let's bring Foxes and Tangos together and have Foxes show Tangos how this all works. What is preventing that in your experience? Oh, I should rephrase that. What prevented that while you were serving as a Tango for 35 Foxes and Tangos to come together and go, this is what I need the tech to do? And you were able to
Mhm.
say, this is how I need you to operate to make the tech work.
I think two things. One, I'm assuming here, foxes probably don't think about tangos until something's broke. That's probably the first thing, right? The second thing is, I don't think tangos. We talked about tangos being undermanned and so many things for them to do. Like they're just running around. I had to preach ops often. Do not react. Like something urgent for the week would pop up. Do not react. I'm kind of going on a little rabbit hole here, but like that's culture we operate in. There's all like last week's work is no longer important. This what we're doing this week is what's important, right? So like burn everything you did last week. But in that environment, when you're undermanned, the Tango, I don't think, even as a warrant officer, like I didn't think these things at WOAC and WOBIC. I'm learning these things at PME courses on Intel processes and IPB and and I'm even doing tabletop exercises, like BCT is going to fight Ukraine. We do that, we're writing out the Annex B, everything that's supposed to happen and what you're supposed to do. I don't think I ever thought to myself what I just described on here. Like, let's carve out some technical training time so that I see what the applications are supposed to do. That thought just never occurred to me. I think it was just so much going on. I've got a cursory understanding. Let me go to the next fire. you know, now that I've been out of it for a few years, I'm retired and I have a little bit clearer space. I think this is why this epiphany is kind of coming to me a little easier. But I think that's the two reasons. Foxes probably don't think about tangos till stuff's broken, and then tangos probably don't think that they need that foundational understanding of the applications. Or maybe there's a belief that the PM office or Greater USACO or ACM or somebody is thinking that the foundational understanding of applications they're supposed to run, it should be given to the Tangos. And maybe they're hoping that the NetF fielding covers that, but it rarely does.
Yeah, that'll be one of the themes I really want to draw out at the end is the assumption that somehow we all know more than we actually do. And that
Yeah.
matters for the future of tech. I agree. It as a enlisted Fox and then as a warrant Fox, I was dealing with so much of my own stuff to think about, oh, how does the tech work behind it and how do I integrate the IT guys into it? It's like I have so much going on, I don't have the time and I
Yeah.
don't have the ability to think through, well, maybe let's try to bring it together. This, what we called, what was it? War on white space
Yeah.
was just pervasive, where every day you have to be doing something
Yeah.
and we're already struggling enough to get our own 10 level skills, 20 level skills up to par and function as a Fox team to try to say, hey, let's now function as a Fox Tango team and all these other things. And we were given so much new when I was leaving, new widgets, new apps, new software. I mean, just in the last 5 years, the amount of RDT&E, research development, testing, and evaluation crap that you're just plowing through, which of it's
Hmm.
going to stay, which of it's not. It's like, I don't, you didn't have the time to even think about the tango. And then once you did, it was you don't know what you don't know. You don't know how complex the communications network is, how complex the mission command information system network is. So it just becomes overwhelming really fast when you go, these are all the things that the tangos have to think about in order to support me. That's a lot of things to learn, and my brain already hurts.
Well, you're what you're saying is striking up a thought I had my last few years before I retired. I felt like operators were becoming less and less operators of systems and more operators of services. And because I think that created a cognizant dis between the systems themselves and having to know them because there was a plethora of services and tools and applications out there. You just need access to JWICs. You just need to get to that network, and then you could pull up whatever service or tool that you wanted to use on that network to do your Intel function. I mean, SIG-winners were like starting to get like this. G-winners were starting to get like this. I mean, they still, yeah, G-winners are a little more, they want their systems, I think. But um, especially when you're looking at national, intel versus tactical intel, it became more about just getting to the service. And that impacts the Tango though, because he's trained or they're trained on maintaining the system and the application software installed in that system. So how does a Tango support operators that are more focused on services? And then whatever service you're using, if 9 months down the road something else better comes out that does the job better and you switch to that, how does a Tango support that? We just kind of revert to just making sure that the Intel network's up and that classified network's up so you can get to it. So that's why Tangos, I guess, revert to being very network focused on making sure like comms are up. What are your thoughts on that? Just curious.
So my read back is as the Army as a service went to what is essentially cloud computing,
Yeah.
everyone just types in www.geospatialisgreat.zipper.army.mil
Yeah.
or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, there's all the maps. So the map is no longer resident on a server that's on the back of the Humvee that you, Evan Beeson, had to set up. You're like, I don't know. It's some
Was
guy
that
named
coin?
Phil over in Virginia setting all of this up. You just need access to the classified network in order to get there. And at that
Right.
point, the Tango's like, why should I bother to set up all of these local servers with these local capabilities? Because all anyone needs to do is type in www.awesomeintel.com and you have it. So if I can just give you some SIP or some JWICs, you'll be happy, right?
Now, is that a byproduct of the coin fight? We could, operators show up to, workspace that's static in a building and workstations are set up and I walk in and just expect it to be there. And, I just need to get to the service allows me to do my Intel function. Or now, I think as I was getting out, Lisco was starting to come up a lot more. And now it's definitely a bigger thing as China is starting to rear its head and become a very formidable force. And what we see in Russia with Ukraine. So Lisco is driving a push back to systems. Are you seeing that on the Fox front? Like operators are like, I want my D6 stack, my 325 stack. I want, nah, screw, I want this edge extend. thing that's a portable, super small box that can host my application or an ARA node or whatever, what are you seeing? I'm just curious on your perspective.
So what I saw was the pitch under Joint Intelligence Operation Concept. I forget what JIOC precisely stood for, Joint Intelligence Operation Computer.
Hmm.
Iraq. What I saw there is, as we displaced the all source analysis system, was this desire to give me as a 96 Bravo, who later became a 35 Fox, tools at my fingertips on my laptop. And you brought the data into the laptop, and the laptop did these operations. The challenge was, as we all felt in the early 2000s, is offloading that amount of data over to somebody else over the internet was rough. Like, you and I can
Oh
remember
yeah.
dial-up internet and the advent of DSL. You
Oh
went, oh
yeah.
my goodness, it's not coming in pixel by pixel or line by line on the upload. It just appears. So the Army and the Department of Defense had this thing with the commercial industry of, oh, to move gigabytes and terabytes of data from one laptop to another laptop is epically hard. If we break it down into smaller packets and put that up on a what became known as a cloud, at the time it was just put it at a server, put it at a data center,
Yeah.
then we're moving kilobytes or megabytes instead of gigabytes of data because you're just updating something at a central repository. And that became the D6 brains
Yeah,
in
that's
one
that
format.
federation and replication was a
Right.
big deal. Yeah.
The brain on one hand, and we had Sydney on another, and the common
Yep.
or the command post of the future, the whole CPOF effort was another whole thing. Hey, there's
Yep.
going to be this central holder of a lot of data, and everybody else just kind of hub and spokes off of that. And that only works, though, in my experience, as long as your internet is good. As soon as your internet is treacherously bad, you want all of that information on your laptop again. But because we stayed in place for so long on forward operating bases, FOBs, I
Yeah.
mean, how long were we in Iraq and Afghanistan? 20 years ish, right?
Yeah.
Poor man's math. When I had a colonel once upon a time, he's like, I was in the Fifth Corps headquarters before we kicked out, and he goes, 1 megabyte was the entire circuit for the entire core. The whole staff was on 1 meg on a good day when a cloud wasn't in the sky and the Lord didn't smite you with some solar flare or some BS, right? On a good day. And then we jump to, well, 1 meg is just for the S2, is just for the G2, right? That allowed this transcendence, this idea that we have stable comms because we're just in place all of the time. And so while that works, I think, in one concept, the other concept is when I'm on the move in a contested environment, I need something that I can tangibly hold. And that's still going to require a tango, someone with an arm's reach to help me work this out. So I am all on board with the concept of cloud computing and fog computing. Where I think we get lost in the rush in the army is this concept of edge computing. That's
Okay.
absolutely lost on us. Because what is the edge, right? Everyone's like, I have an edge device. Okay, if everybody has an edge device, the whole army cannot be the edge. Like, the army of
Yes.
495,000 people is not the edge. The division cannot be the edge if the brigade
Exactly.
has an edge. The brigade can't be an edge if the battalion has an edge, right? The edge is the literal edge of your computing devices. So, what is the edge of our computing devices, and what is the requirement of data and processing at that location? Everybody else is some form of a service center. And you have to really think of what level of service does a division need to provide if I'm disconnected from the rest of the internet? Okay,
Right.
what amount of IT support do I need to manage a division enterprise if I'm disconnected from other divisions in the core?
So that's reintroducing systems and getting back to systems that provide the edge or disconnected services and apps. So we've kind of gone full circle. Like I remember my Tango time going to those services. Like you kind of told the story there, and that was good. That was really good. But now we're getting back to and needing systems, and the benefit now is pipes are bigger. We can leverage many pipes at one time and not just one pipe. That's new. We didn't have that 10 years ago. Um, and then systems are smaller and more powerful. So I know there's a desire to have AI at the edge. So that takes some powerful compute, but I don't know. I know how you have feelings about AI and misuses of it, but the tangos and foxes, just to stay on that, just to reorder and refocus ourselves. Back to systems. Foxes, if you can pin down what services you want, whether they're changing or different from your last formation or last unit, and just create opportunities for those tangos to see you use those applications and what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to work and the data formats you're operating with, that's going to help them so much when it's crunch time in an operation or an exercise or NTC because they're going to feel familiar from the minute they walk into the problem that you're bringing them. They're going to be like, okay, I'm not just starting off fresh. I have no idea, and I'm going to fumble through this. No, I remember getting training 3 months ago. I remember, oh yeah, the map's not coming up. Oh yeah, he's not getting his KMZs or KMLs are not showing up, or whatever, data format's not sure. Like they're immediately gonna start working on the issue from a foundation that you've provided them that they didn't have before. And like I said, 35 minutes a month would pay spades. In a normal, sergeant's time training kind of, at garrison where there's not a lot of stress and they're not, just carve out the time and put it on the calendar, make the commanders support it. Tell them that, I mean, be honest, like putting soldiers' lives at risk if you don't take the time to do this now. I mean, I speak for experience in Kabul, and that going down. I wish I'd have sent tangos out there more prepared and more trained than what they were. They were trained, they were prepared, but they could have been more prepared and more trained if we would have prioritized things better at home station. So I'll just leave that there.
My question as we move forward in time is, did you as a 35 Tango, as you were ending your time in the Army, feel like hardware was becoming easier to set up? And I ask this question because amongst many senior leaders informed and influenced by a lot of tech personalities or thought leaders say, hey, 19-year-olds, 25-year-olds of today, they just intrinsically breathe technology and know how to set up a Starlink terminal. And therefore, they will just magically know how to set up a GBS. And therefore, they will magically know how to set up a Trojan.
That's a
And so,
fallacy.
so yeah,
That's a fallacy. I'll give you a great example. So unless the app that you want a soldier to install on a smartphone like device is in the Google Play Store or in the iStore, they're not going to know how to install it. They're not going to know how to install the SDK kit, how to do ADB push to push a APK file to an Android phone, to set up an app separate, like because they've never done this at home, unless they're doing development or things like that. Now, if they have a, kind of experience, that's a little different. But this, it's a fallacy to think that kids that just use TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and are on their phones all the time, that they have the technical know-how of how these applications are working, how they're installed on phones, how they're installed on computers, and how to set them up. Now, there's with running high-end games, maybe there's some thought that kind of applies because you have to have hardware that's robust enough. But the easy answer is just buy the next Xbox or the next PS5. And if every kid's doing that and their parents are paying for it, then no, they're not learning. If they're building their own hardware and their own PC to have the specs that's needed, that's a little different. But I would say that's 1 in 10 at best. You know, I don't think every kid out there is doing that. Their mom and dad's probably buying them just the next gen console that has all that stuff baked in and works a lot better than your programmer record system that's delivered to you. You know what I'm saying? So it's a fallacy to think that no, it takes reps and sets and experience and exposure to difficulty. Honestly, if we were serious about this, like the U.S. government would make It's one thing to be a producer of a product. You make it easier for your consumer, but if the U.S. government was really interested in making technically smart the next generation, they would force the generation to set up their own applications or set up their own hardware. Like, oh, that maybe there's a push from the other direction from making it easy for commercial consumers all the time that would force, you know, kids to have to build their own PCs and have to install the applications themselves or do those kind of harder things that push through. I don't know. Maybe write their own code. It's I don't think it's everybody. I don't think it's every kid. Just speaking for me. I got kids of my own, so been trying to teach my daughter the code for years. She's 11 now, and she just doesn't have the interest. So people are people, kids are kids.
Yeah, where I'm angling is my view of how a lot of things are being digested right now is that the new generation of 35 Foxes, so 25-year-olds and younger, we as the Army can just give them a next generation C2 edge device. And when I say edge device, I'm going to give them something that weighs 50 pounds because it's a battery. It's a distributed spread spectrum communication system,
Hmm.
and it's a tablet on steroids. And if anyone's like, that doesn't weigh 50 pounds, I want you to slam a couple batteries in there and some hardware and a tough book and let me know what that weight comes to. And
Yeah.
you're like, okay, that's roughly 50-ish, maybe 30 pounds if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And you go, this 35 Fox is going to land on the ground. They're going to throw out this Starlink antenna. They're then going to also throw out this other antenna for 5G network, this other antenna for VHF, this other antenna for HF, which, if, as you as a Tango will attest to, I'm sure you're like, yeah, you're going to need multiple antennas because there's no antenna to rule them all. And every antenna has its unique property that needs to be set up in order to apply. You, as the Fox, are then going to sit down and boot up your software. If there's a problem with the software, I think the current Army thought process is the Fox just knows how to fix whatever these software things are because we know how to deal with apps. So, like, well, okay, we can believe that if we want to. And then on a secure network, by the way, in which does a Fox have permission to fix anything on a secure network with software? No, they don't. How many certifications did you need to fix software on CyberNet?
Yeah, to be a administrator, you gotta be IET level 2 technician, and you gotta have Sec Plus and then a computing environment cert at a minimum.
How many hours, or like, what was that? A month worth of
Sec
education?
Plus, like it's gotten harder, progressively harder over the years, so I try not to make sure mine lapses. But it could take some serious time and study to pass that. And then computing environment, that's not so hard. Just pick whatever, computing environment you like.
Yeah.
I recommend Linux. Everybody should learn Linux. It makes your life so much
I
easier.
just vomited. You gave me, oh my God, Linux. No. I mean, I'm with
No,
you, but no. Yeah.
imagine if all the workstations were Linux. It
I know.
would save so much on Windows licenses and Microsoft's 365 licenses and the development install. It's easier to secure. Anyways, I'm going down a rabbit hole. But um, no, what you're describing, yeah, it's your hope as an operator is that you pull all that kit out, you turn it on, and it works. And it works
Yes.
every time you turn it on. I would say this, the industry is getting better at developing solutions that are getting there. There's a company out there called Allspace that's getting really cool. They're building antennas, SATCOM antennas that do multiple bands. So you could tap into multiple satellite constellations with one antenna type. It does L-band, S-band, and I think Ku-band. We are looking at that for our company as one of the transport options. Starlink, the roaming one's kind of small, so that can work fairly decent for you. Um, SIM card, modems can actually be pretty small. Yeah, I mean, if you have an Android phone, you could turn that into, if you got 4G service on that, that can be a transport that you could leverage for your kit. And then your encryption coming in. Hopefully your keys are loaded, they haven't rolled, and your ComSec's good. That's always a problem, right? So, but then your software and your compute and all that, hopefully you turn it on and it boots right up and it runs the drives and a hard drive didn't come loose in the midst of jumping or doing whatever you're doing. Like that happens. So is a Fox and like, let me reseat and recheck my cables and If you've been to Dismig, maybe you know the ABC has batteries and connectors, but if you haven't, maybe you don't. So you're touching on what 35 Tangos might need to learn from the Tango community is some simple troubleshooting that can save you in that kind of environment. I think there's some skills there that maybe foxes aren't exposed to unless maybe in your own home environment, if you troubleshoot your own Wi-Fi or your own network or your HDMI connection for a video or whatever, you're trying to watch a movie at home, maybe do some troubleshooting with that. But there's some simple troubleshooting steps that maybe fo all foxes could learn from tangos that would help them in a pinch when they're in that environment around something's not working. I don't know where to start. It's almost the exact parallel that I gave with the Tango, never seeing this application run properly with the right data coming in. The Tango has no foundation to start on with troubleshooting. It's on the flip side with that. The Fox has never learned some basic troubleshooting steps, so therefore they've never seen what a system does when a hard drive's loose. They've never seen what the system does when a cable's loose. Never been exposed to just simple troubleshooting on some physical things that you can do to a system to make it come up when it didn't come up for you for your operation. So sounds like we have two iterations of training every month. One with the Foxes led by the Tangos and one by the Tangos led by the Foxes. So
Yeah, and what I would hope the audience really draws away from this is in my opinion, we are not yet at a point technologically, specifically within the Army, to be able to segregate or combine, to be able to combine Tango tasks with Fox tasks. Like I can't shove order of battle analysis, weapons capabilities analysis, COFUMs, BDA,
yeah.
weapons parametrics, psychological warfare operations and TTPs and all of this stuff. I can't shove all of that into a Tango's brain. And if anyone glazed over, as you were talking about L band, S band, and all this other like no top 10 stuff, it's like you can't just shove that in any Fox's brain. C plus plus, Sec plus, etc. Is like all of that, as you said, equates to time. So I think right now it's still a Tango and a Fox world because the software is complex. The hardware, even if it's simpler, is still complex enough. And you still need to do some level of cross training between a Fox who's going
Yes.
to be on there typing on the thing because there's 12 of us in a section and there's 8 of you in a section. And where I only have to be concerned with me, myself, and my computer, you have to be concerned with you, your soldier, the brigade next to you, the battalion next to you, the Signaleer next to you, the Geo Winter next to you. Like, you're like, I got to fix all of this. So you all need to know enough Tango things to kind of triage your circumstance and then I can come in to do some bigger heavy lifts. You can't be everywhere at once, and everybody's a priority one. So it sucks. You can get to who you can get to when you can get to them.
I want to touch on metal for a minute, mission essential task list. Like, notice that we didn't bring that up once. And the reason is what some Department of War civilian developed at USAID code says that you need to know for your MLS may or may not be applicable in the real operational space when you're trying to do the job. And what really matters is what you're actually trying to do is applications in the software and the data that's coming in to meet your commander's PIRs, right? Like that, ultimately, that's what matters. And I don't care what a metal task says or doesn't say. Now, if the metal tasks support you learning IPB or the processes behind that, fine, train on metal tasks. But I think you would get more juice out of these small iterations of training, doing what we recommended earlier. Show Tango what the application does, what it's supposed to do. So he has some foundational understanding, or she has some foundational understanding. And then on the flip side of that, Tango's help like Fox with one of their systems, if it's a 325 stack or whatever it is, and just maybe it's a Sipper laptop, maybe it's just something simple as that, and do some bugs on it and just teach them some basic troubleshooting. I think that would yield so much more dividends than looking at any metal task list or any structured doctrinal training. I'm not saying doctrine doesn't matter, but I think winning matters. And I think what you got to do what it takes to win. And what does that take? That takes, if you're alone and unafraid, what's going to stop you from accomplishing the mission? What does that look like for Fox? What's that going to look like for? That's what I'm driving at. So,
Yeah, because How much time do you guys spend in getting certifications as tangos? Sec Plus and network admin, etc.
Yeah, they used to do Sec Plus, Net Plus at the schoolhouse. It's not a requirement to graduate anymore, which I think is ridiculous because you can't be a sysadmin on any class, on any DoD, DOW network without Sec Plus. So, and a Tango that can't be a sysadmin is not a useful Tango, in my opinion. So, quite a bit. The computing environment. So going to 325 training gave a computer environment cert, so you could get that some, from net fieldings and things like that. I would hope IAW shops, Tango shops spend, a good minute. Narada learned this early on. If you send your Tangos to technical training, often they're not available to be tasked for BS duties. So it's not a bad idea to send your Tangos and be undermanned consistently, more undermanned, so that your critical tasks are taken care of by the little bit of manning you have, and the rest of the guys are out there getting technically trained so they can be better Tangos when they come back to the formation. It's a way of doing it. I was a believer in doing my own technical training and doing it at home station. The problem is the company commander could come in and just poo-poo all over that because you're right there and you're still under his command. I'm still a believer in that NCOs should lead training and even technical training, and pocket training at every opportunity possible. It's just back to that statement you made earlier, white space is eaten up. There's always stuff to do, online training to do that's not really that useful. I forgot where I was going with that. Where was I going with that, Garrett? Help me out.
How much time does it take for a Tango to get all of the certifications to operate on a classified network?
I would say a Tango, a solid 40 hours of training for Sec Plus, probably another 48 hours of training for a computer environment. And then doing the admin paperwork to make sure you cross your T's, dot your I's, and you're on the memos. So probably another 2, 3 hours of admin work behind that to really get ready. And then getting your account set up. That's always a problem too. So there's probably another rigor dealing with the six, get your account set up on the tactical SIPRnet or whatever it is, and getting your your token. You got to get that. So, man, we're starting to look like 100 hours, maybe all said and done, 90 hours, something like that. So it adds up.
Plus all the study, because that was just the courses, not the studying that you did, right?
Right. That's just the courses. Um, and then, yeah. And then learning the systems too. Like I got back to that, like showing a Tango what that looks like. That's going to take time. What does your application do when it really him or her having time to troubleshoot that and understand what they're doing. So learning about NiFi flows and data formats. And so there's additional training, like a Tango that doesn't do Dismig like things will have a gap of understanding. I did until I went to Dismig. So I think that was very, very important in my understanding of the whole technical Intel enterprise, not just the process driven Intel enterprise, if that makes sense.
Yep. So pushing that all into a single person, whether that's a Tango becoming a Fox or a Fox becoming a Tango as we iterate forward on life, is a very tall order. And I think the futurists out there are overly optimistic in what a single 20-year-old can digest
Yeah.
and deliver on in a 3-year period. Because if we're already having a lot of these struggles, like, okay,
Well, it's achievable if it's simplified. I think the hardware platforms are getting simplified. I think if we could agree writ large, maybe the standardization needs to be this. Pick your all source analyst app, tool, data source, whatever it's going to be. And maybe that needs to be standard against force conform, core levels, division levels, whatever, the shops. Maybe it's different from formation to formation because I think there needs to be some flexibility. Need to be mandated across the Army or programized because I think we screw ourselves when we do that and get stuck in this acquisition cycle where things are slow to update and software sucks and it doesn't doesn't work. I don't recommend that, but maybe simplifying the amount of tools at echelon and applications used and the data sources used. Maybe if we can agree on a common data format across all formations and that the applications must. I thought we did that with MIDB many, many years ago, but apparently, no, we got 20, what is it, 25, 25 Bravo, 25, 25 Delta, 25, yeah. I know there's like different formats. Like I thought that was a stupid problem to run into. Um, there needs to be some standardization to simplify the tools that need maintained and integrated. That methodology is applied. It could be achievable. Um, I still think transport networks is going to be a problem, and ComSec is going to be a problem, and multi-domain networks and CDSs and all that. Like that's still a flavor of the problem that's not simplified yet because we still use networks to segregate classified data. We've got to stop. And I'm hoping that day comes sometime in the next 5 to 10 years.
So this brings us to something I hadn't thought of before. What is the difference between a 35 Tango and a 25 series?
So 20 like a 25 Bravos trained on like help desks, particular network, 25 Sierras on SATCOM. I forgot the other 25 series. The Signal Core, I laugh at them. I usually don't learn about them. So I need to apply. They frustrate me. I'm more familiar with the warrant officers, the 255 Alpha Novembers. The Alpha is like the server tech, the November's the net tech. So those are the two guys I usually dealt with. The server tech would be like the BCCS, the DDS, and know that side of it. And then the net tech would be the guy that would help me work with the gate connections and the IVPN connections and things like that, and move black traffic and tactical sipper and your oh my gosh, your list of secret IPs. But the difference, I think you asked what the difference is. They're a little more specialized and compartmentalized as opposed to Tango's being the jack of all trades for Intel. I mean, if you go back in time, I think the reason the Intel community did this is I want one guy I can bring in my skiff that knows how to do networks and apps and computers and workstations, and he can just fix it all. So let's just get that guy and make that in West, and he could fix like all the systems and just be near the TS stuff, and then we don't have to worry about the signal core. I think that was the problem, though, and I still think that's a problem that's worth considering, and it's still a problem today, in my opinion. I think it's still a problem today. Let me ask you this: I talked to any Foxes that have used McNays and had their mission network provided by the Six out in the tactical environments. Are they typically happy or upset or disgruntled with the amount of service that they get from the G6 and I don't use ForceCom now. No, it's not ForceCom anymore, but what has been your experience with McNay and getting that SIPR service on the tax SIPR side to do your mission? Has the Six done a good job servicing you?
Oh, remind me what McNay stood for. Mission Command Network
I,
Authorized Entry or something of the sort.
Enterprise Node, I think, or
Enterprise.
Enterprise Network.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
So one, it always depended on the six team. Like no S6 shop was the same as the next S6 shop.
Yeah,
Some S6 shops were very good. Other ones had a lot of room to grow.
yeah,
We never operated on a SIPR series of McNays simply because, the network bridging thing. The Trojan network is
yeah.
is a different flavor of red than your tactical network. And then you always have this core problem. When I'm in a simulation training environment, my circuits, my data flows, the volume and velocity of information is different than what we anticipate in combat. And I never felt we were in an appropriate situation to replicate combat to pass judgment on quality of service effects on a McNay for operations classified networks versus intelligence classified networks. And that was
Okay,
always my sticking point. I'm like, I don't know if we're providing an accurate scenario to provide accurate conclusions on what this thing can do.
that's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah, I would love to. If there's a Fox or a Tango out there that's seen McNay used personally and not so much in an exercise environment, please chime in the comments. I would love to hear some feedback from you. Get engaged, join the team, get on the podcast, share some stories. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I imagine the ACM, the Army Capability Managers and the program executive offices have heard a lot about all of that stuff. My concern is as we end the lifetime of the program executive office and go to these portfolio, PAEs. I'm trying to remember now. Portfolio Acquisition Enterprises or something of the sort. They're combining program executive office, i.e. WNS and mission command and network. So it's all anything that has to do with electrons flowing over a computer is being
Yeah.
merged into one. A lot of positives there. But what I think this goes back to is the Army will have this moment where they look at the 35 Tango community and they look at the Signal 25 series community and they go, the only reason the Army has 35 Tangos is because of a TSSCI requirement. We
And
don't,
you have a jack of all trades from a technical standpoint helping the operations. That could be a crutch for Foxes, which is what we talked about earlier.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the future of the Tango community will be interesting as PAE program or portfolio acquisition something for I forget what they're going to call it, mission information, mission command information, whatever it's going to be. They're probably going to go, hey, is it really worth having a singular MOS to maintain IT for a TSSCI system series? Question mark, squiggly line. They're also probably going to go, hey, I have a bunch of 25 series who are worked like dogs. I have 35 tangos who are worked like dogs on keeping up all of this communication infrastructure. How do I have analysts start maintaining their own infrastructure, their own computing systems? So reading the tea leaves, everyone's going to have to get smarter on a bunch of this stuff. So it becomes a question of how do you get smarter sooner?
Yeah, I'll tell you from the Tango side, we have made deliberate and concerted pitches to go to the Signal Corps for several times over the years, and then mainly because the community did not want to they wanted to shorten MOS training at AIT. They wanted to training and generalize us and not keep it specified, not give the training we need to stay technical enough to meet the mission. And I think those efforts have been out of frustration with the Intel community. And probably operators too from the coin days. Remember the environment I talked about where an operator would walk into a building and you said coin was 20 years, but fobs existed too long, but it became about services and less about systems. And that was a very frustrating time for us. And I think that all kind of worked together to motivate us to try to go to the Signal community, but I'm kind of glad we didn't. I don't like I'm just not impressed with the Signal community. I'm really not. I'm just not. I find diamonds in the rough though. There are some good warrant officers out there that know their stuff really well, but they're forced to use capabilities that have gone through these acquisition processes, and even Gate is not what it was advertised to be. It's not as awesome as everybody thinks it's going to be, and it's a lot of it. We haven't talked about this, but it's because they use the same pipes and data as they do for admin for cybersecurity for like it's the same pipes that are doing everything. And the benefit of doing Intel's own transport is you guys can segregate out your mission data, your Intel feeds, and it's not getting jammed into the same pipe as all that other stuff that's doing cybersecurity where it's pushing patches, updates, authentication. That's a big one. Sipper Cat Car is doing authentication for a division of users across the same gate pipe. Like, give me a break. Good luck getting anything down that to help G-Went. Never going to happen. But you know, I, that's why we didn't want to go this. I feel like being an Intel side, I feel like because of Inscom and what they do with money, I've learned the hard way because I'm a believer in standardized maintenance and reporting our maintenance and reporting our systems. But at the same time, they do some things there so they can buy capabilities outside that are QRC like and cooler and can newer tech and it's better and even Trojan in my opinion. I hope it doesn't go away. I think it's better than relying on what the sixes had been forced to use and what they try to do to optimize it. But yeah, I just do you want to talk MOS at all? I mean, we've kind of talked about the future and what that's going to look like. I've kind of got some notional things from you, Seiko, on like what the tangos might be doing and how the MOSs might collapse a little bit. Did you want to touch on that?
I don't think we should because they have about, I don't know, three or four options that they're still floating around in all of
Okay.
these conversations. So Acme needs to get the information, figure out what option seems the best one to follow and then send that out to the force. And we don't want to like muddy those waters too much. But I think we can really ask the question. I don't know if you can really beat the dead horse on, do we really believe that hardware and software has gotten good enough to where you can condense MOSs, where you can
Mm.
merge MOSs? Can we really say launching of applications, patching, and updates is so simple a caveman can do it? Do we really
No.
believe
Mm-mm.
that I've received like industry is going to give us effective enough technology off of Jump Street where I don't need a Tango to fix it all the time in the field, getting shot at on separate islands or on separate regions of Europe? Like, do we believe hardware and software can be sustained from some help desk and I don't need a Tango forward? Question one. As of today, if you went out there and you're like, hey, there's no more really tangos to turn wrenches and type code and fix all this stuff, you're like, oh no, we can give that to Novembers and Sierras and Foxes, and they can just all consolidate in a help desk, and I don't know, Grafenvier or frickin' somewhere. Like, is that really realistic based on the current hardware and software?
I think, I mean, I work for the defense industry, defense contractor, and I work on some of the latest and greatest software capabilities out there. I think from a hardware perspective, things are getting pretty exciting. I think from a black transport perspective, things are getting pretty exciting and pretty robust. Automated pace comms is starting to be pretty standard a lot across a lot of vendors now. Um, but software. I think the push to do like machine learning and AI on the hardware that's at the edge is it you're pushing software that's trying to do more on limited resources that's just the hardware, and when it doesn't act nice, you're going to be like, where's my Tango to fix this? I know that's what's going to happen, right? So, but if you're doing have applications, gets back to what I said earlier. If you have applications that you know work, um, ICI, for example, and that's on there and it runs well, and it's not bloated, it's not using a ton of resources and comes up every time after a restart, then yes, I do see possibility of getting away from having to have a Tango on every mission, every operation. Um, it's really resiliency of the hardware to tactical use. It's resiliency of the software booting up properly every time. I think remember I talked about transport. I led off with the transport being robust and it provides options that we didn't really have before. I think if you got 4G, 5G, if you got some sort of Starlink thing, if you're tapping into some sort of local network some other way, and you got multiple transports and you are getting out, the ability to do remote support is more assured than it was in the past. Um, I get it, D-Dill, satellites falling out of the sky, things like that. Yeah, I think people just need to cool their jets a little bit on the AI ML stuff, on the edge type, compute. Use applications that work, lightweight applications. Think cell phones, APKs. Think, that kind of stuff like that. Light applications, uh, and commercialized so that easy setup, user friendly. It's possible. It's possible. There's a particular vendor out there with software that everybody seems to love and hate at the same time. While their front end looks amazing and it does work fairly well, their back end's pretty bloated and they've got baked in things that don't help it run efficiently. Um, that's not going to meet the mustard, I think, long term. They've really got to retool their software and go back to the hood and redo it. I think for them to be effective long term. Who knows? Maybe we have quantum chips in the next year or two, and then like it doesn't matter how bad your software is, it'll run anything. You know, that is like a possibility that's out there. Uh, if quantum computing hits the street, man, that's gonna flip the whole board upside down. I don't even know if you want to go down that rabbit hole.
No, I that one's a little too I get it, but that's so forward leaning. We can circle back around to that
We'll
later.
trip on ourselves going on that one.
what I often have to remind myself is it's easy for you and me to be like, I think the software will get to a point where you don't need a Tango. But we forget, how long have you been doing information technology?
20 years, 20 plus years.
Okay. So
Yeah.
as a person who has had 20 years in the field, are are you having to apply the new kit that you got, you give it to soldiers, you're testing it out. It's like, how much of that 20-year experience are you having to pull from? You're like, oh, just a small scripting issue. Like, small to you, you just said the word script. Like, when I pull up HTML, my brain explodes. When I pull up Python, my I have like glazed over looks in my eye. And we're not even
Yeah.
talking about Java and C++. We're not talking
And
about
JSON
NiFi.
files.
We're not talking
Yeah.
about JSONs and Apaches. You say I need to go back in and optimize resources. Like, hey there, hi there, ho there. Who the heck is trained in optimizing tensor threads, right? Because Google
Yeah.
and a couple of these things with tensor threads, like that only makes sense to someone who's kind of lived the life and gone through the education. When your standard demographic is you are 25 years old or younger and you have been in the army for 4 years or less, like who as a November, a Fox, a Golf is running around going, let's talk tensor flows and Puppet and VLANs and virtual operating systems and RAM. Like, that's just not in the lexicon. But my guess is a lot of the cool kit that's coming out now, that's kind of just baked into the understanding of, yeah, when you launch it, you just understand what some of these terms are.
Yeah. I mean, it's so you talked about a lot of configuration and engineering that kind of goes under the hood of all these applications and what makes them work and connect and
Mm-hmm.
has to be done to make them function. But hopefully we're past that point when it gets into a 35 Fox's hands and the operator's hands and it's, the data feeds have been connected. But to your point, when something goes wrong, maybe it's nothing on the kit that he has out there. Maybe it's the data feed he's pulling is down. Maybe there's an outage on that end. How would he know? You know,
Yeah, and that's my point is, as we often favored in Dismig, there was General Johnson who said, beware of people who only talk about the future because there's no accountability in things that haven't come to pass. Like, exactly.
yeah,
I can agree with you. AI fixes everything and technology shows up and all this configuration and maintenance and stabilization and monitoring. It all just bloody works. I'm like, cool. As of today, which, let's go back in time. The last time I jumped out of an aircraft, the last time I stepped out of a Humvee, a Hilux, whatever, it didn't just. And as much as anyone wanted to say this brand new piece of kit brought to you by some, defense contracting company of the future named Unicorn Happiness, it's like they didn't do it either. I still had to understand what a Link 16 feed was. I still had to understand what an
yeah,
IPS feed was. And there's still binary codes. You still have to understand what's wrong with USMTF structures, and maybe I need to go into a normalization table and like work some stuff
yeah.
out. Or if I'm dealing with an ESRI product for mapping, they're like, oh, you got to go into, I forget what it bloody was, but it was basically a workflow visualization where you would put if then things in to build this entire program of processing GeoInt files. You're like, holy bloody crap, if I have to do this
That's
to
a whole
integrate.
course in itself.
Right. And I have yet to see, I got it. Next Gen C2 is a thing coming to you in the year of our Lord 2042. But that's my point. If the average 35 Fox is in for 4 years or less, it's going to take 10 generations to get to the point where the thing just bloody works. In the meantime, I think it's helpful to communicate. You as a Fox are going to have to pick up some technical skills, because as we figure out how to integrate this, as we learn how to make it better, you're going to have to learn some of these workflows and then communicate back, hey, this is not going to work for me out here on the edge. And tangos are going to have to, as you said, get the hang of the software is going to get more complex, the hardware is going to get simpler, but then the workflows are going to become more critical to understand as we triage what software hiccups are happening where and when, and that becomes more complex. But I think also the communications resiliency side is going to become infinitely more complex as we work on cryptography and we work on
Yeah,
having the ability to go from distributed spread spectrum. Hey, I can bounce from a satellite to a 5G network to a fiber network to a UHF to a VHF network. It's like, okay, you're going to just get smarter on RF propagation and everything else. So for everything that we get simpler, we're going to make more complicated somewhere. And I think it's going to be hard to merge tangos and foxes or tangos and papas or whatever together. And as much as we want to merge tangos into the signal core, as long as you have a TSSCI and an intelligence information workflow, you can't really merge them together. We all have to understand how complex this beast of burden is and figure out how to fight as a team.
100%. And I said it in the past, out of the ashes of the 35 Tango has to come the technically adept operator. So if the Tangos go away, you guys got to better learn how to do some troubleshooting and how to configure some things, or you're going to be hurting bad. But let's hope that doesn't happen. I want to hammer this one more time. Big Army could serve everybody better if, or I would say the echelons at echelon could decide on the two, three, you know, apps that they want to use, how they want to operate. And some of them have done it. Some of them picked Maven. Some of them picked, like we're going to use Maven at the Maycom and Goth Foundry, and that's what we're going to use. That's fine. At least they've made a decision and they're being consistent with it. At least the Tango is now going to get reps and sets on setting that software up and working with that software, being familiar with it. And it's not going to be shifting, with the whims of build some proficiency there. But whatever your tool or whatever you want to use at your echelon, just be consistent, and I think that'll help the Tangos get a foundation under them as far as configuring applications, data feeds and pipes, and do some reps and sets with them to get exposure to what they look like, and setting them up for you is just going to pay huge dividends when it really matters.
So the last question I have for you is, what is your recommendation to 35 Foxes looking to form an effective working relationship with their Tango shop?
Yourselves, why do be honest with yourselves. Ask yourselves why you want a tango. When do you need a tango? What can a tango do for you? What do you need that tango to do for you? And then go have a conversation with them. And hopefully that materializes into some opportunity training that we've discussed a couple times on this podcast already. Yeah, but be honest, they're there to help, but you got to empower them. There's a language gap. There's a user versus maintainer gap as far as the applications and software and tools. They don't process the data you guys do on the applications. They probably don't know what USMTF is. So just be cognizant of that when you go talk to the Tangos, that there's a language gap. And I think Narada was spot on when he did with you guys at 80 seconds. Sit you guys down, draw out what you guys are trying to accomplish. How do we get there? Where do I, and just go step by step. Where did you lose me? Where did we get lost? You said Miku. I have no idea what that is. And just be real with each other and have conversations. Will pay dividends. Don't be so stuck on or focused that you don't look out to your left and right to your battle buddies in the formation, and empower them to help you accomplish the overall. You're all in the fight together. The more you guys can cross train, the better team you're going to be. And we got to win. China's catching up. I'm concerned. Russia's getting to hone its craft against Ukraine right now. So it's getting more and more lethal by the day. We're no longer as big of a superpower as we used to be. Um, so that cross training could be the difference in a critical time and space in our nation's history, honestly. So you need to really see that lens and from that gravity, be motivated to be ahead of that problem set before it comes.
Yeah. I agree with you. As a fox, sitting with your tango and working through the workflows is the best thing you can do to build a relationship with a tango, because you will all both rapidly discover how much stuff you have to get working just for a fox to make one PowerPoint slide. If you really go through a sensor to shooter workflow, Because as a Fox, you're like, all right, I need to do Intel support to situational understanding to targeting into ISR. Okay, and I need to do GeoInt, I need to do SIGINT, I need to do HUMINT, and all. It's like, okay, so all of those things need to communicate. Yes. All right, who is the only MOS that touches all of those things to communicate data back to you? Tangos. Oh, so the only way you're getting SIGINT back from the SIGINT thingy is a Tango. The only way you're getting HUMINT back from a HUMINT thingy is a Tango. Oh, the only way you're getting GeoInt back from the GeoInt thingy is a Tango. A Tango is going to have to maintain that hardware, is going to have to maintain that software, the firmware, and everything else, run all the configurations and in the integration. And then you, as the Fox, can be like, I see it on my dashboard. Oh, it's like, okay,
Yeah,
now
the
understand all of those things. And now you get to understand this is all of the things the Tango is burdened by. These are all the critical pieces that I need to work in order to be successful for my outputs. And now you go, now I can communicate to you together and I can prioritize the information flows to you. I need more GeoInt, I need more SIGINT, I need whatever it is to be more successful rather than just make work better.
the hope and expectation, and this is where tangos get frustrated, is that all those ints that you describe, they're all operators of systems that they can go out to a space and set up their equipment effectively and actually know how to operate it and get it up and running. But that's not always the case. So then the tangos get work orders and get pulled to help those different disciplines out with their own systems, if it's a enhanced or whatever it is, and that bogs us down and we lose time, we lose opportunities. So yeah, there's a lot, and there's a lot of things that stop us from being successful. Touch your systems often. Don't live on X until it's exercise time, because you're just asking for pain. Touch your systems every week if you can. That would be ideal, and use them. Use them to do your mission, your job. Just do it inside of a building on a nice zipper or JWIX, thick client system, whatever you have inside of a building. Go do your job weekly at a minimum on your tactical system. I would highly recommend that. Well, thank you, Garrett. I appreciate it. I know that was the last quote. A little story time. Garrett. So I was the young Tango who didn't even know what USMTF was, heard about this SMIG, and I'm like, yeah, I'm being told I need to go. People seem to think I'm a hard charger and lean forward and try to solve problems. So they want to send me. And I take the DISMIG pre-course. I do terrible. So Garrett takes me, and he spent 5 lunches with me, and took his personal time and helped me understand message formats, and that was really the part I didn't understand, was just messages and message formats, but and why it was important. But he took the me and ran me through and got me schooled up, and then got into the DISMIC community. And so I just want to take the time to say thank you, Garrett, for those lunches. It set me up for success and gave me a springboard into a community and an understanding that helped me be more effective for the entire Army and the Intel community for, probably the last 5 years of my career in the Army, 6, 7 years in careers. So just thank you. I just want to say thank you.
It's always a great thing and a blessing to be with people like you who just want to learn and we used to say all the time, suck less tomorrow. Like, hell yeah.
That's
Help me remember I can't slow down. Now
yep.
look at you. You work at Stark Industries. No one can see because we don't have the visuals, but he has a Stark Industries background because it's Evan.
Yeah, went to Disneyland, took a snapshot. That was a cool teens background. So definitely a nerd. Um, but if you guys have any questions about edge capabilities, I am with one of the defense contractors that is building, I think, some of the coolest edge capability out there. Um, One of the things we do is provide everybody who thinks of cloud, they always think of cloud compute or cloud storage. I have been trying to educate when I can that cloud compute and cloud storage doesn't work without cloud transport. These companies have spent billions of dollars to make sure transport between cloud locations, availability zones, is highly resilient, highly robust, and high speed and secure. You're not using those networks for operations. It's easy to set up in an availability zone almost anywhere in the world right now to spin up some compute to run a server that's now near your operation that could help you. Or so that's something we do with my company. And I try to get people to think outside of the normal cloud context of compute and storage. You can export for your operations and have highly resilient comms back to Conus or back to your home station wherever you got data, your data feeds at. So my little plug there, shameless plug.
No, yeah, and it's critical in the distributed. I kind of used to laugh all the time at the statement of distributed mission commanders. Like we've been practicing distributed mission command for as long as militaries have been running around. Where it really hits home right now is Ukraine having a non-contiguous front line and having to operate in small teams and ever mobile outposts and things of this nature, relaying information to each other and having drone screens and surveillance platforms like we had with the raid towers or the PTIDs, et cetera, in order to cover the gaps. Because if you have static trench lines, you get blown up. If you congregate, you get blown up. And if you're manpower short. So as you're saying, as we send all of these things out there, you go, yeah, if you want the world at your fingertips, you are going to need resilient distributed communications to a bunch of small teams making a bunch of small,
Yeah.
strategically important, a lot of data driven things. It's like, yeah, that all needs to be built in, and each of those teams needs to understand how to operate those platforms, operate those comms, and then yeah, you need it. Distributed mission command has a different flavor than it used to have, but it's always been prevalent on the battlefield.
Before we go, I, as a Fox, this is something I've always been curious about. I'm sure you heard this term. Every soldier is a sensor. You guys integrate like just observations from just soldiers on the battlefield. I mean, I guess they're setting up salute reports, spot reports, things like that. What do you do to get that into the system? Are you generating an entity into your application with that spot report? What's your TTP to like ingest those things into your common Intel picture? I've always wondered this, and I've never really seen it because I'm usually running around putting out fires.
Yeah. So we did a Q&A session on it. I think it was in BDA. I got to look it up again. It was one of the last things. So there's two forms of information. There's tactical/combat information, and the whole
Yeah.
purpose of the Blue Force tracker, which is now going to be NGC2, next generation C2, was to do combat information tracking and the
Okay.
aggregation of all of those observations and position reports, OBSPOS.
Yeah.
So a salute was generated into an OBSPOS report or an
Okay.
enemy situation report. And so your BFT at the battalion or brigade would just become flooded with red diamond here. Okay. The red diamond here at the brigade or battalion, well, at the brigade was supposed to go through the cross domain server suite and get fed up into a intelligence fusion stack for
Right.
the fusion exploitation framework to merge those red diamonds with any intelligence reports you received from ISR and go, okay, based on what the observations were on the ground from Cav Scouts, everybody else, and what your intelligence holdings are, this is probably what is happening on the ground. Now, that would have to get checked against a 35 Fox who would go, well, the machine says this is two brigades or two motorized rifle regiments. But what I know based on my experience and my understanding of everything else about how things are employed is it's a reinforced regiment rather than two regiments. You're like,
Right.
oh, a
Right.
nuanced thing. Does it really matter? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. More important, you know why the enemy commander reinforced a regiment. You know what the maneuver context is. Is
Yeah.
that a fixing force? Does that mean he's exploiting? Does that mean he's culminating? Is there some other ruse or denial and deception unfolding based on the
Well, and
context?
that's where an OBS pod. This is why I think that tactical battlefield information, the OBS pods, could be so valuable to you guys.
Typically, and this is the hard thing for people to scale through. There is a difference between tactical relevance, operational relevance, and strategic relevance. Um,
Oh boy, you're
so
teaching me something.
um, So for your average brigade or battalion, and this shows up in the Army operating concept, only is capable of doing an operation for somewhere in the neighborhood of 72 hours before you have
Okay.
to refit, reorganize, refuel, do all of these things. In a
Yeah.
combat situation, what you see in Ukraine is typically brigades and regiments. When they culminate, that means they're out of people and all their equipment's on fire, and personnel need to be cycled, new equipment needs to be brought in, and all of these other
Right.
things. So really what ends up happening is a lot of those observation position reports are only relevant for that battle or that engagement. Like I saw the enemy, I
Yeah, they're
shot the
very
enemy.
timely.
I saw the
Yeah,
enemy, I
very
shot the enemy.
timely. Yeah.
So then you're like, well, what's the intelligence value out of that? It comes down to battle damage assessments. Okay.
Okay.
So how much of the enemy has been shot up,
This,
and in what
yeah.
are they dead? Are they wounded? Are they ambulatory? Are they going to be reconstituted tomorrow? So now you're in a conversation up at the division or corps level of, can the enemy continue to fight at the current rate? Will the enemy need to transition to an offense or a defense at the current rate? Or is this area of the battlefield now so weak that we can attack in there and break through?
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about that. The relevance of the information coming, it's the time in which in the scale operate.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Tactical relevance can go into an operation or strategic relevance if a specific unit shows up with specific equipment. Like you go, hey, the enemy only has 2 infantry regiments in this sector, and you start
Yeah.
fighting it out, and then suddenly T-72s show up. You're like, well,
Oh,
course of action one, indications and warnings. The enemy is reinforcing the infantry with armor to secure their positions, make sure they don't collapse, whatever it is. But if suddenly you're eating 40 tanks, you're like, there's 40 T-72s. I'm feeling nervous now. And then there's some BTRs that show up and some air defense. You go, no, no, this is no longer reinforcing. This is a mechanized or armor force who is now on the offense to breach something. At
yeah.
the operational level, you go, hey, was there an enemy operational reserve that was supposed to be committed to achieve an operational level effect against our division? Yes. And you go, well, tactically, we found him. He's here. Hit the panic button. Shoot all of your munitions. On the strategic level, if it's something like Pokrovsk, where this is a crossroads and there's many logistics inroads, outroads, and everything else, so you go on the strategic level, if that enemy exploitation force secures Pokrovsk, we lose the ability to defend 50 kilometers of an entire sector.
Do you so you read like World War II history and stuff? A lot of it's just it doesn't get into that intel side of it. It just describes operation unfolding and what happened and who did what and things like that. Is there any books out there you recommend that would like kind of describe that kind of analysis behind the intel that was coming in and what the reaction was and what turned into operational effects because of the decisions made?
Yeah, books. I can't think of one. The
Email me
easiest
if you
one,
think.
yeah, the easiest one to go to is Operation Market Garden, because World War
Okay, I've heard of
II,
that one.
yeah, that was going through Belgium up
Yeah,
into the Netherlands. And what ended up happening is on the intel side, initially the assessment was the army group that was up there was beat the crap out of by the British and the Canadians, and was reconsolidating and reconstituting and couldn't offer effective resistance against a focused assault by 3 airborne division minuses and an armor corps. And if we punch through there, we could rapidly get into Germany and all this other stuff. And then the combat forces were like, well, I can only see with combat information something like 15 kilometers. So I see there's German guns and I see there's German movement, but I'm really not too sure what's behind the German guns and behind the German movement because I can only see
yeah,
with
yeah.
binoculars and crap. Well, the Field Marshal Montgomery combined the intelligence information and the combat information to go, we can exploit this moment. What ends up happening is later on, intelligence gets a number of Enigma intercepts and everything else and goes, there's actually an SS Panzer Corps rebuilding combat power behind the lines. And they have roughly a Panzer division worth of kit kind of spread out that they could rapidly mobilize
Yeah.
if necessary. And now you enter the great debate of commanders everywhere. What does the Intel nerd mean by rapid mobilization, right? Timelines
Oh,
matter.
geez.
48 hours, 72 hours. And this is where correlation of forces and means, force ratios, wargaming matters. Field Marshal Montgomery believed, based on the information he was presented, that his 30 Corps, which was the armor element, could advance on one road through lowland, swampland, because that's what Belgium and the Netherlands are in that area, could advance rapidly, linking up with airborne forces faster than the Germans could mobilize their disparate panzer forces, their armored forces, who were resting, refitting, and recuperating. So yeah, he'd get shot up, but he would get there faster than they could get there to fight against him. And what
Mm.
ended up happening was not that. So
Yeah.
Intel knew, yeah, it ended up that he managed to make it to the 82nd or the 101st Airborne, to the 82nd Airborne Division, but then couldn't make it to the Polish Airborne Troopers and the 1st British Airborne Division, and they were short of annihilated, basically cut off and had to come back on their own. And that's why it's called a bridge too far. Montgomery
Yeah.
couldn't make the last bridge with 30 Corps. And so you see there the tactical information was accurate. And intelligence information understood what was behind the battlefield. And
Right.
everybody was able to pull those two things together. And ultimately, it came down to a commander's assessment of could the enemy move as fast as possible,
Right. Right.
or would we give ourselves the advantage? And there you go. So that's to me the first one that screams in a battle, where in a ground battle, where intelligence is looking deep and pulling things together. Combat information saw the front line, both saw them accurately. They were able to merge them together. And at this point, you're like, okay, now it's a command and staff determination on what this means to the battle plan. And you'll see that playing forward. And the reason I can't really point a book is military intelligence was always about battle tracking combat information until the
Yeah.
1970s. So the Army Security Agency, ASA,
ASA. Yeah.
was the one who did, we're going to do combat information, radio reconnaissance, direction finding, order of battle, tracking, right? This is all about when we engage an adversary, what does it mean? We're,
Right.
we're it's what I can see and shoot directly in front of me, and then we send that all back to the intel nerds who are using other intel crap deeper. So there was this segregation, if you will. And by the time ASA merges with other things to form INSCOM in the 70s, that's where
Yeah.
like 10 cap shows up,
Yeah.
INSCOM gets formed, and we go,
So
okay,
I want to talk about today, though. Like, did Coin kind of mess up that combat information integration that INSCOM was doing? I'm just curious if, because we have tactical systems that are supposed to help us collect information and help us understand at the tactical level what's going on. But I see from my experience, I saw an overdependence on national information, national collection, not tactical, almost always. So was that an anomaly or was that the status quo?
that is status quo for a military operation other than war.
Okay.
Mutua was the old lexicon, and it showed out in Vietnam. The
Okay.
reason combat information always makes you feel let down is by its very nature, you have to engage with the enemy to get combat information.
Information. Yeah.
Now, maybe you don't
Get
have to
this.
shoot at each other necessarily, but you guys kind of got to know where each other are, either by your
Oh, yeah.
drones or
Move to
scouts.
contact. Yeah.
Right. You got to gain and maintain contact in some capacity. So what that means for force on force maneuvers is you're like, I see tank, maybe I don't shoot tank, but I know tank is there. I hear tank is there. I can report tank is there, and you can kind of get a vibe, right? And you're
Right.
like, I'm a tanker, they're a tanker, I'm an infantryman, they're an infantryman, I'm an artilleryman, they're an artilleryman, and you can kind of riff generally what artillerymen and tankers and infantrymen are kind of about if you study each other's playbooks. You can kind of get that. In a counterterrorism, counterinsurgency fight, that's a game of I'm just going to screw with you in any way I can find. And it's very hard to anticipate where someone's going to just suddenly come up, ambush you, and run away again. Like, what's the
Right.
combat
Right.
information? I got punched in the face real hard. What happened to them? They melded back into the population, those sons of biscuit eaters. And so you're constantly stuck, unable to get ahead of an adversary's decision making cycle. The only way really around that in a mutual is you need informants. So whether that's a confidential informant, right? This is all
Yeah.
this is all law type practice stuff. Hey, I'm going to need a confidential informant, someone undercover. That's called
Yep.
human, right? I need a human
Right.
or
Right.
someone inside the network to tell me the stuff. Well, that becomes sensitive because that's a person's life on the line. If you let
Yeah.
everybody in the company know, hey, I got this information, then inevitably the enemy's going to find out about it and they're going to be like, who could have leaked this information? Steve. Steve was the only one in the room who kind of thought this way or spoke this way. You're like, well, Steve's dead. We just lost our inside man. And then you're down to things like, wiretaps and stuff like that. Well, the Army's not like running around doing, Department of Justice type crap every single day. So
Right.
when you
Right.
come down and you're like, hey, we need to submit a judge for in the United States back in the 1970s, we need to do a wiretap and we need to do like overhead collection of pictures with great lenses and an SR-71 flyover and all this crap. You're like, that's not intrinsically something the Army does. So the national intelligence community needed to provide assistance to be like, hey, this is how you do some of this human-based operations, and that's why
Yeah. And that's
JSOC
what
and
10 cap.
SOCOM, yeah,
Yeah. And 10 cap does that.
were so
I get it.
good.
I feel like most, maybe because I've worked at ACC, NSA, TDA units, and things like that. Not so many tactical units, except when I was a junior. But it just seems like they were always super heavy on national and not really looking at that combat information. But we're not trying to be in contact. We're trying to save, not minimize casualties and not put soldiers in harm's way and that kind of stuff too. So
Right. There's
yeah,
only so much that a UAV, a Cav Scout, and an infantryman can supply you back. At some point, you need trade crafting capabilities that exist in Title 50 to
yeah,
understand how basically a terrorist, an insurgent in a lawfare capacity are trying to attack you. You're like, that's just where Congress put things. But now that we come back to force on force, we have more Title 10 things that we can employ to find and fix an adversary that are organic to us.
more things that tangos aren't taught.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. So, well, it's almost 8 o'clock here. I appreciate it. Um, is there anything else you wanted to say or cover?
No, I think that about covers it. I myself have to scamper off. So,
Okay. Well, thank you for the time and the opportunity.
no, thank you for offering and sharing your wisdom.
No problem, man. You have a wonderful evening.
You too. Take care. Bye.
All right.